You mentioned MH370. Of course, this is the plane that nobody knows where it is. There's all these conspiracy theories, all the search, and 9 years later, we still don't have any answers. And again, people want to point to the one pilot that he was suicidal. It was a suicide murder, plot by the pilot, or it's something else, but we don't know. And we won't know until we recover that plane. Just like we would never have known about the carbon monoxide unless Emiliano's body was recovered and that plane, and obviously the plane was found. So we don't know. And you cannot know until you know. And the only way to know is to recover that plane.
Have you ever thought about going to, I'm not sure if you've ever, been looking for it, or if you've ever been called up to get involved in that. Is that something you ever have or ever would get involved in?
Well, yes, I was called up.
Oh, you were? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was, when it first crashed 9 years ago, I was at, that must have been 2014 or something.
Yeah, 2014.
I was working on another project in Oman. I was in a very remote part of the world, a small island in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Oman, where we have no internet, no cell coverage, nothing. We have no communications. And while I was there, that incident happened. The Australian authorities who were responsible for it contacted me, but I didn't even know about it. I found out weeks later when I got to land, and by that time they had moved on and found somebody else to advise them. And after that, I volunteered. I did the same thing. I said, listen, I'm happy to help. And I kind of personally regret that I was never involved, because I think they could have used somebody of my experience. And also I think part of the reason Australia were willing to put their hand up and take the responsibility for the search, because there's, it's a Malaysian plane, there's Chinese nationals on board. There were only 5 Australian nationals on board, was because of the success that I had in leading the search for 2 different shipwrecks in Australia in deep water that had never been done before. Okay. In one shipwreck, it was a similar thing. People thought never be found, and we found it. We found it quite quickly. It was very, very high profile. Funding from the government go right up to the prime minister at the time. And I led that expedition, and then I led another expedition on the opposite coast. This is the search for HMAS Sydney off of Western Australia, and then after that, I was the project manager for the search for the Australian hospital ship off of Brisbane. These are 2 World War II ships, but that one was off of Brisbane, and that was for a different government, but with government funding. And so I think those successes sort of maybe crept into the psyche of the people in Australia that, yes, we can lead these type of deep water search expeditions, and they can be successful. And but sadly, I wasn't involved. So.
And do you think that plane will ever be found?
Not if they don't look.
Right.
That's the problem right now. Then nobody is looking. So if they don't look, it'll never be found. But yes, I believe it can be found. I believe it can be found, but it has to. They have to have a different, somewhat of a different mentality to it. And again, maybe this gets into the psychology that I had mentioned previously, because they went out there and searched, and the clues are totally different. Again, we can have a whole long discussion about that. But so it's a big box. It's very uncertain. There's no guarantees, but it definitely sank in the Southern Indian Ocean. You cannot get that wreckage floating and being recovered where it was found on Reunion Island and Madagascar and Mozambique without it crashing in the Indian Ocean. That's an oceanographic fact, okay? But exactly where it crashed, is the big unknown. And there's lots of people working on it. And there's now, unfortunately, lots of controversy and competing things. So this is what happens in these sorts of big international stories. You get lots of people that believe they have the expertise or the skills to say where it is. And the truth is a small number of people who truly do. And then you get the cranks, the conspiracy theorists come in, and it messes the whole thing up. And and that's what happened with Sydney. Why Sydney wasn't found? We could have found Sydney in the 80s. We didn't have to wait. You know, they kept saying, "Oh, it's the new technology." The sonar that we were using was developed in the 80s. We found it in 2008, and that was part of, you know, they like to say, "Oh, there's new technology," and we were using new technology. No, we were using really old technology, but we still found it. So we could have found it way back then. But these conspiracy theories just led to confusion and lack of confidence and competing theories. And that's what unfortunately is happening with MH370. So what the authorities have to take this mindset, and this is not just Australia, not just Malaysia or China, but really international air safety worldwide, is that we are not going to stop till that plane is found, right? We're not going to just do one expedition, because that's what happened the last time. Somebody said, "Oh, we have a really good, we've got a pinpoint," they said, a virtual pinpoint. And there was no such thing as a virtual pinpoint. Well, when you search that virtual, when somebody stands up and says you search that virtual pinpoint and it's not there, then that person says, "Well, you know what, I'd like some more money." And they say, "Well, we searched your virtual pinpoint. We're not going to give you any more money." You lose confidence, you lose credibility. And the approach that I think they should have is that these countries, they've got oceanographic vessels that they should spend a couple of months every year going down there to search the area. In addition to the industry searching, there could be a paid search, there could be this, there could be a number of things. But basically, continuing for a number of years so that you're expanding this box. Not to the point that you cover the whole Indian Ocean, but that you cover all the probable areas and all possible areas. Because until we do that, we don't know what happened to that plane. And we all fly in these planes.
Yeah.
777s, they want to, you know, they're the workhorse of the airline industry. I mean, they're one of them. And how many times do you fly in a 777? So somebody had suggested, what if we all put 10 pennies, 10 pence, 10 cents, 10 Australian cents of every ticket into a pool for air safety internationally? In a year, you'd raise 100 million, hundreds of millions, easily fund the search, multiple searches, and have a kitty to be able to have a company or an organization or a pool of equipment, ships, and personnel to respond in incidents like this internationally around the world, when the Americans are not doing it, or when, you know, the French are not doing it. And you saw that with this Titan submersible. It's the same kind of situation. An incident happens, international waters, remote location. Who's got responsibility for it? Who's going to fund it? You know, who's going to conduct the investigation? And that incident, the profile of it, you know, the story, led to this, you know, this amazing response. On the Monday, you know, I was asked the question, can they put something together out there to get there on time? I said, no, you know, and by the Thursday, they had the people out there to actually find it. No, and what happened is all what we thought happened. The thing imploded, and there was never any chance to recover any survivors. But that kind of response, nobody knows who paid who funded that. That would have been multi-millions for that kind of response. But at one time, the French were on their way. They did get to the scene. There were ships and all sorts of things. Well, you know, the same situation for international air safety. And I think that's the type of thing that needs to be thought about. And in this country, I don't think there's enough attention. The amount of money that is spent in the counties or you know, nationally by the central government is peanuts. But we're an island nation with boats and planes flying all the time, you know, and every once in a while, whether it's a plane or a boat, I've been called, I can tell you multiple times after Emiliano Sala, one for a boat off of, you know, off North Wales. And again, who's responding with the right equipment? And